Hello, my name is Dan Humberg and I represent HarvestFires.com. This is an instructional video to help you with the tin preparation for a combine harvester for a Firestop kit. The model that we're talking about in this particular install is a case model 7120, and I'll show you how to go from flat pieces of tin to a set that's bent up, and we may also do the bench assembly of that tin to help you know how the tin fits together and get you started with your installation. This is the first 7120 I've done, so it's actually the first time folding the tin for me as well. Before we begin the actual process of doing the tin, I always give this same cautionary statement that while the Firestop kit is very, very effective at stopping the ignition of volatile organic dusts, particularly things like sunflower dust, at the exhaust system of your combine, and it will generally stop the chronic fires that occur because of that. I cannot guarantee that you'll never have a fire on your combine. There are other sources of ignition on the combine. You can have a hot bearing, you can have an electrical short, you can have a failing alternator. There are any number of things that can start a fire on the combine, and so please be aware that you still need to be vigilant, even though this should reduce the chronic fires and hopefully make sunflower harvest a lot more like harvesting wheat or soybeans or something like that. So just be careful. Having said that, let's begin with the process. I'm going to get you facing down so you can see this. I'm actually doing this on the tailgate of my pickup. Normally I do it in the shop, but it's raining out there and I've got everything I need in here, and you can actually do it in any space that works for you as well. I want to talk briefly about tools before we start actually bending tin. All right, you're looking down on the tailgate of my pickup. I have a piece of cardboard spread out here and some tools and tin laid out. I'm looking at a tool that I found on Amazon that is probably a standard tool for sheet metal guys. I didn't discover it until recently. Anyway, it's a thin piece of steel with a slit cut an inch in here for bending flanges that are about an inch long, and then there's another one back here the other side that'll bend flanges that are probably in the 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch width. Anyway, it's a very handy tool for bending some of the longer flanges on this tin. If you have one of these, great. If you don't, you want to buy one on Amazon, they'll ship it to you pretty quick. This cost me something like $15 or $16. It was worth it. If you're going to do more than one tin kit for these, you may find that to be advantageous. If you're only doing a single combine, your own, and you don't want to buy one of these, you can actually get by with, for some of these longer bends, by just taking 2 scrap pieces of angle iron, perhaps 2.5 feet long would be, for this kit would be sufficient, about 3 feet for some of the other combine kits. And if you put those 2 pieces of angle iron back to back, actually even better if you drill a hole in the ends of the 2 pieces so that they'll stay kind of lined up with each other. You can then drop that in your bench vise, and you can pinch this a long piece that has a long flange on it, pinch the flange in between the angle irons, and then you can just push it over to do the bend. All of the tin that we're going to look at here is I think it's 24 gauge galvanized steel. And every place that we're going to bend a flange has about 50% of the line cut away as a dotted or perforated line. If I can get up here so you can see that, there you can see through it a little bit to see the perforations. And it will bend, preferentially, it'll want to bend on that line, so that makes it relatively easy. It's hard to bend a long one like this with your fingers, and that's why I use the tool. The smaller bends, like this one, that's going to bend down. I can just do that with my fingers directly. So this material works very well for that. But that long tool will do it, or a couple of angle irons back to back will do those long bends. Most of the rest of the bends can either be done by hand. I also have a tool here, a sheet metal tool that's really kind of handy. I bought at Harbor Freight for, again, $15 or $16. Here's another sheet metal tool. I think I bought this one at Runnings, and so you can probably find something like that too. It's a vice grip product. And then I have a small parallel jawed pliers. It looks like a dinosaur thing or something like that, but it works very good for flattening out pieces and for bending small flanges. So those are the tools I'm going to use for this part of the tin work. Let's see what we can do. I'm going to probably step through this by number. The pieces are actually numbered. This is the biggest piece in this kit, or longest piece in this kit. It has a number scribbled on it with a magic marker as it came off the laser cutting table. This one says C72 for 7120, case 7120, and 001. It's part number 1. And so we'll start with that and probably go through number by number here and do our bends. So I'm going to start with this one. It has this long bend in the back here that's actually going to go up against the block of the engine. I'm going to put this tool, it's a little wider, that flange is a little wider than 1 inch, so it doesn't go all the way in there, but we'll go as far as we can. And then I'm putting this face down on the back of the tailgate, and I'm just pushing it over and helping the ends up a little bit by hand. And this bend is going to come just slightly past 90 degrees. It's a little bit more than 90 degrees. I did most of it with that. I'll actually take this tool and tweak the ends where we couldn't reach with that tool. So we've got that bent a little past 90 degrees. I've got some pieces you could gauge that with. This piece, I don't know if you can see that, but if this vertical flange that we just bent was along this vertical line, the wider piece of this should line up with this dotted line right here. So if that's vertical, then this would, so it looks to me like I've got to bend it just a little bit more slope on that when I line that up. And actually, once you have these bent, if you need to adjust them, most of the adjustment you can do with your fingers. You can bend it back a little bit real easily, either with your fingers or one of these tools. So we really just need to get it close. We don't have to be, that doesn't have to be perfect. And we can adjust it if we go to assembly, or when we get on the machine, we can adjust it there too. So that's the longest bend in the whole kit. This particular flange has 1, 2, 3 other bends. This one that I bent down before, I'm going to do again, this second one, and just bend that 90 degrees down. So it's perpendicular to this face. And then, in fact, that's probably going to be just a little more than 90 too. This outer end one will be 90. And then I'll use this longer sheet metal tool to bend this one down. And that one probably will be a little more than 90 just to parallel this back one, I think. That'll be a vertical face. And again, we can adjust them a little bit if we need to as we do the assembly of the tin. So that's piece number 1, and it's ready to go, or at least ready to try. Piece number 2, C72002, is going to go under the, I'll just explain for a minute. This piece that we just did is over the top of the exhaust manifold. If you're back here is the engine. I'm in the hole between the engine and the grain tank, if I'm orienting this. And this flange, this narrow flange that we just bent up, has 4 holes in it. Those holes should line up with open threaded holes in the block on your combine engine right above the exhaust manifold. So there are places where we can attach this. So this is going to be right above the exhaust manifold. This piece number 2 is going to be underneath this on the bottom of the manifold. And it's a horizontal piece. And it only has a single flange. That flange bends up 90 degrees, and there should be a hole in your block between 2 of the exhaust ports on the block that's tapped as well. And so we're going to put a bolt through to hold that piece on right in there in between. Now we have to do that during the assembly. Once this piece, the whole thing is assembled, you won't be able to get inside here because this is going to enclose the exhaust manifold. But as we assemble it on the machine, you can put this piece on, and then we'll put the outer enclosure on around here. So that's piece number 2. There's a little flange on this end, but we might bend that flange down, but only a degree or two, because essentially there's another piece going to overlap it. And I put the dotted line there so that there's an indication of it there, but we really don't bend that flange much, just a hair down so that the next piece that will overlap it, and we want that one above it because the air blast from your radiator is coming in this direction, and we want it to slide off that tab and across there and not catch inside in between two tabs. So we want this one above, and that one will shed the dust that way. So that's part number 2. Part number 3 is the piece that's going to join those previous two. It's got a tapered pair of flanges here. Those are actually going to be, that's going to be on the top or the upper part of this part. It's got flanges all around. Let's just start bending flanges here. I'm looking at, notice the orientation, because you could bend them the wrong way if you're not careful. So I'm looking at this with this tapered area here. So I'm looking down on that. There should actually be a number cut through the flange here, right? You can't probably see that, but right here there's a little underscore mark, and there should be a number 3 above that. The laser should cut that out, but there's something in their software that wasn't set right, and the laser ignored all the numbers on here, and so you can't use that as a reference. But there should be that little underscore mark there. So I'm going to grab this flange, bend it over, and it's going to go over a little more than 90 because it's going to match up to that one that we bent the first time. These two on the end are going to each bend about 45 degrees, and that will get us to 90 degrees total and get us back to the block. These flanges bend over until they line up, and they should almost close up here when you bend those. The bottom is exactly the same. We're going to bend this one under, only this one I think is 90 degrees and not more than that. And then these tabs bend under, again, 90 degrees. So now we have a piece that will join with this one on top. And one of your tests might be, does this fit on top? Well, I look at it and I say, this got to bend just a little bit more. And now this one would kind of lay on top. That flange needs to go down just a little bit more. And there, that lays flat on top of there. And if we tweak it even just a little bit, we can see that the screw holes all around there line up. And so we've got that piece bent right. So that one's going to go on top there, and the other piece is going to go underneath. I'll actually do the assembly of that after we get all the folding done, I think. So that's piece number 3. So I'm looking for 4. This is piece number 4. It's going to go under the right hand or that end of the manifold. Again, the block is back here, engine block is back here. I'm in the hole, and this is going to go under the manifold. So these tabs on the end are going to bend up because they're coming from underneath the manifold, and will attach to a piece that wraps around here. And I'm going to utilize this tool on that long flange. Again, you could use this, or if you use your bench vise and a couple pieces of angle iron. And I can push that over 90 degrees. There we go. Now, this one also has a tab here that if we measured correctly, it should slip in between 2 of the exhaust manifold port things, or the exhaust manifold is connected to the block, and there's a space in between. And there should be a hole that's tapped for an 8mm bolt there, and I'll give you the 8mm bolts with the kit. So that one will slide in there underneath there, up from underneath perhaps, and this bolt will hold it on in place. Piece number 5 is the piece that's going to cover the right hand manifold, the outer face of it out here. Now that I've got the number on this face, but that number is actually going to be on the inside, because we need these 2 flanges to bend around again to make a 90-degree total corner. And in this case, we put the flanges on the top, on this piece number 1, we put the flanges on this one and the bottom piece so it wraps around like that. The reason is because it's easier to reach the screws on this face on this one. On the left-hand end, it's a little bit easier to get the screws in from the top and the bottom because you have the air coming out of your compressor turbine right here, and it blocks this front face, so it's hard to get screws in there, so that's why we did that. So that's piece number 4 all ready to go. Or take it back, here's piece number 5 all ready to go. Just 2 bends, these flanges, 45 and 45 to make a 90 there, with the upper part having the taper on it, the top part having the taper on it. That's 5. That should bring us to 6. I'm going to show you 6 and 7 together. This is part number 6, 006. If the laser had cut it, the number would be right here, but it's not. There's just a little underscore mark. These 2 pieces are going to go to split between the exhaust turbine and the air and the compressor turbine, and they will go up against the face of the compressor turbine. And we're going to kind of make an enclosure around the exhaust turbine. This will be the side by the compressor, and we'll have another pair of these to go on the other side. Now, if you're looking down on top of this, we've got a compressor turbine here, and we've got exhaust turbine here, and the exhaust is going to head that way. And so this piece will drop down from above, and this cutout here should fit over the turbocharger bearing in between those 2 turbines. And this one eventually will come up from underneath. And they overlap, and this one should overlap inside or towards the exhaust turbine of the first one. And you'll notice that there are holes here that line up. And I've actually marked with the magic marker a Sharpie just for my own benefit, but you can do the same thing. Some lines across there to help know, okay, that's the way those are oriented. This is one of the few pieces where we're going to put screws through from the inside to the outside of the enclosure. This is going to be the inside of the enclosure around the turbine, exhaust turbine, but it's very difficult to get those screws through from the outside, maybe impossible to get them in because the compressor turbine is in the way here. But if I measured correctly, we should be able to put them through this way. Hopefully. If I did it wrong and I get to the install on my test install on the machine and you can't reach them, I may have to shoot a different screw through there, but they still line up like this. It's just I may have to find a different place to put the screw through if those screws go through and hit the exhaust turbine. They need to find a place where they don't run into it. But I think this will work this way. I hope so. I hope I measured correctly. So these are going to overlap that way. All of the tabs except this one here, every other tab on here is going to be bent. In the case of where we're looking here, they're going to be bent up. They're going to be bent to the inside of the enclosure. This one gets bent to the outside. I'll do that so I don't forget it. 90 degrees to the outside. That will bolt onto the face of the box we just built around the exhaust manifold. So that'll screw on there, not bolt, but screw on there. Every other flange here bends the opposite way, 90 degrees. So that piece is finished. This one is going to come up inside it. Again, we check our marks to know which way we're oriented. And then I can bend 1, 2, 3, 4 flanges, in this case up or in, and I'll do that for you. Alright, so we've got a pair that will go together from the top and the bottom, surround the compressor, the turbocharger bearing, screw together from the inside and attach to the manifold cover with these. I've got 2 screw holes there. I don't think you could get another one down in there. You just can't reach it to put it on. So that's part 6 and 7. Alright, we've formed up the pieces for the left side or the compressor side of the exhaust turbine. These 2 pieces will be kind of the same shape and will go on the right hand or the downstream side of the exhaust turbine. Notice there's a circular, when they fit them together correctly, there's a circular hole in the middle that'll go right around your exhaust pipe coming out of the turbocharger. The holes in the corners here are to allow air to pass from the enclosure around the turbo up the space around your exhaust pipe when we enclose that. So this piece is going to be kind of the mirror image of the last one. This Let's see, I've got it actually flipped over. This is going to be the side that faces the exhaust. It'll go like that, and I marked across these junctions so that I could line it up with a Sharpie. This flange here, is the single one that's going to bend up in this case. That's going to bend to the right, so it connects to the exhaust manifold enclosure. Everything else is going to bend away or towards the exhaust turbine, so that we'll have tabs to attach an enclosure around that with. So I'll do that. Okay, so we've got pieces that fit together here now and have tabs so that we can attach an enclosure around that exhaust turbine when the time comes. So that was piece number 8 and piece number 9 formed up. This is piece number 10. This piece is going to wrap around the bottom side of these previous pieces. I'll take a minute to talk about this. You can see these kind of flower petal cuts that we've made here, and they will overlap like this. This one is where your turbocharger pressure line is going to come through. See if we get that where you can see it. This is the turbocharger pressure line is going to come up through this area, come over the top and go into the turbo bearing, and then the oil has to get back to the crankcase, and that's going to go down through a larger line back down to the crankcase out the bottom of that turbocharger bearing. So these pieces are going to wrap around this enclosure. This one, I believe, is going to it'll be level or horizontal when we get done with it. And it's going to attach to the enclosure around the exhaust manifold. I have that part here. I think. Where is that part? I believe it's going to catch that hole. Yeah, those two line up, and there'll be one from the left-hand side that catches this one. And so we come out from underneath the exhaust manifold, and then we're going to go down and under the exhaust turbine. So this piece, that's my phone chiming there. Not exactly sure of the angle, whether this is not probably 90 degrees, but it's fairly steep, and we'll adjust it when we do the assembly of the tin probably on the rest of this kit. But the rest of this is going to follow around, and so you can use the piece on the left here, this piece that goes underneath the exhaust turbine or the left side of it, and we can bend this around, and it'll tell us how far to bend each of these. They are not 90-degree bends. There, we got that one real close. And you can tweak them with your fingers, it's not hard. So, just a hair more. And that was, of course, a little too much. That will also pull in line when we start screwing it together. And the next one is a steep bend that'll bring this piece up. Almost 90, not quite. So there, you can use this as a guide and form this up so that it goes around there. Now, what I want to talk briefly about these, we'll probably talk about them again in the installation. video if we get to that point today or later. But that oil line is going to come up through here. You can measure and measure and measure and hope you know exactly where that line is, but I don't guarantee that it's in exactly the same place on every combine, depending on who assembled it and stuff like that. So yeah, we hope it'll come up through there with a little bit of clearance, but those flower petals have been bent in there or put in there so that we can bend those to give a little bit more clearance. And we want those petals to be bent so that they're parallel to the line and not perpendicular to it, because I don't want this hard edge that the laser leaves rubbing against your pressure oil line, because they could abrade that or cut through it and then bad things would happen. So you want to make sure when we assemble this that we've got clearance there. Now since this piece is on the outside, this piece is farther out and this one's on the inside, if necessary we'd bend the tabs up on the inside one and down away on the outside one so that they don't interfere with each other. But bend those tabs so that you have both a little bit of clearance around the line when you install it, and also so that those petals are parallel to the line and not perpendicular to it. Same thing goes for the return line underneath here. And if you have to, you can expand the size of this cut for that so that we have clearance there. I don't want to make it any larger than necessary when I design it and cut it, but you need to have clearance around there so we don't hurt those lines and lose oil there. So that's the piece that's going to go underneath the turbocharger. The next piece is number 11. That's going to go over the top of the turbocharger. This first set of dotted lines here actually probably won't get bent on that, because I think it's a straight slope across the top of this onto the piece that goes across the manifold here like that. And so I don't know that that one necessarily gets a bend. But the rest of them are going to go, they're going to follow this around. And so you can use this piece as the guide. So we'll bend that one down a little bit, about like that. That was a little more than I needed. There it fits. The next one gets a steeper bend. And I can just push down on the tailgate of the pickup and with my fingers and make that bend. I test it against this. And we got that pretty close. And in fact, the screw holes start to line up, and you can sharpen a corner there with a pliers or something if it's too round a bend for you. But it's not bad. So that one will go there, and then we make a corner with the last one and come around the bottom part of that. That was a little too much. Close, still a little much. Alright, that's pretty close. And that one will overlap. These two will overlap. They'll come together about, actually there's about almost 2 inches of overlap between those two. And the screw holes will line up to allow it to overlap. Okay. When you do the assembly, you have a turbocharger geometry control that comes through right here on the back of the, right off the back of the compressor turbine. And it comes right through, and it's very difficult to be able to measure it well enough to know exactly what to cut out in here to go around it. So when you do the assembly, you're going to bring this one down from above to fit around those side pieces, and you will have to cut an opening up in here in order to fit around the casting and whatever it has to fit around to slip down over that. But you want to do that in a couple steps so that you don't get too much. You want it to fit as close as you can, but again, hopefully have just a little bit of clearance around there. It's cast iron underneath, so if it touches it, it isn't going to hurt it. But you're going to come down around that. Correspondingly, the bottom piece is going to have to come up and overlap there, and so you're going to have to cut down into this one to where it wraps up from underneath that piece. And you just have to fit it. I don't know of any better way to do that right now, especially on the first iteration of this. After I fit one on a combine, I may be able to figure out a cutout that would work pretty good for that, and have the computer and laser cut it next time. But for now, you're going to have to do that one yourself and fit it. And that's not a hard process. It's just a little bit of tin snips work here. But mark it, cut it, fit it, mark it, cut it, fit it, and expand it until it slips down from on top and the other one comes up from below, and they overlap each other and go around that that turbocharger geometry actuator thing that's off the back side of this. So those are pieces 9 and 10, I think. And once you have that done, then we're on to covering up the rest of the exhaust pipe. Okay, you're looking down at my phone, and I actually have the model for this tin kit brought up here on the program, the CAD program that I use to draw it. I can actually see it and run it on my phone. It runs in the cloud. Anyway, I'm using it to check the order of things on my this enclosure around the exhaust pipe. I don't know whether I can get it close enough that you can see it very well, but just to know which piece is which. And I can rotate it around and look at the way that that goes together, and it actually has the screw holes and everything showing on there, so I can know which piece I'm using. So I'm just using that to get a handle on it. I'd like to be able to show a video clip of this in your right off the computer in your video here too. But anyway, that's the assembly drawing of all of this tin put together. Actually, right here, you can see that that gray thing in the middle of the picture there is that geometry actuator that I tried to figure out how it comes out of there. But you see it comes through the blue area here, but you're actually going to have to cut out both the blue one and the rust colored one below to overlap that area where that thing sticks out of there. Anyway, I can now see from here which piece to work with next on the set of pieces that encloses the exhaust pipe. So having looked at that, I can tell that this is the bottom piece coming out, and now I'm going to have exhaust turbine here on this side, my left, your right hand side probably, and this is going to come out under the exhaust, and your exhaust pipe on the 7120 comes out and makes a little bit of a zigzag, and then it starts uphill. And so this piece is going to be the floor of that kind of first part of that box. This flange on the end, 3 holes in it, is going to bend down away from this face, looking at the way that this is oriented, that's down away from that face. And those 3 screw holes are going to allow us to screw it onto the turbocharger enclosure, hook onto it there. So that one bends down. These 2 flanges bend up 90 degrees. This one on the end here, this wide 2.5 inch wide one or whatever, is going to bend up. I'm not sure exactly how much. It's not 90, it's just a little bit. It starts up an uphill slope. And then these 2 flanges bend up on each side of that to help us connect to the next piece. So that's the bottom of the first section of that box. 1 flange bent down to hook onto the turbocharger cover. And at the other end we start up, and the rest of these flanges bend up to give us something to screw the sides to. So we'll set that one down there. This piece is going to be right above that. They should be kind of aligned with each other, except this one's got shorter. And this one, this flange out here on this end, it's part 14. On this end is going to bend up because it will attach to the face of the turbocharger enclosure. 90 degree bend on that one. And then these 2 bend down so that we can attach the front face, or the face where I'm at in the hole, to that box. Okay. So we've got a top and a bottom for the box for that first part of it. Then we have number 15, and we may be able to look at this and sort out which piece or where it goes. this one has no flanges on the edges, and so it's going to be the one that goes on this face out here, because I already have flanges to screw it to near me here, or under me on these two parts. And I can orient it by looking at the screw holes, maybe. Oh, I take that back. I can orient it this way. Okay. There are two holes in this flange, and then there's a little slit in the middle where the number was supposed to be in that part. And those holes line up, and these two holes line up with this one. So this is going to get a bend to fit to that. It's a very slight bend to fit up against here, like that. Still a little too much. There, it'll go up against that. And then this flange bends up, and that attaches to the turbocharger box face again. That one's going to come out towards us 90 degrees. So now that one will go on here like this. Somewhere those holes are in there. There they are. And notice we've got flanges on two faces here, and the bottom one has its flange as well. So that's going to be the front of the box. This one is going to be the back of the box, and we just need to know whether it's this way or this way. And this one has flanges on it. On the back piece has flanges so that we can put screws through from the top. It's easier to reach from the top, and I think you can get at the ones to shoot up from the bottom as well. So I've got 3 screw holes there. Those line up, and I have a single screw hole out here, and that one lines up. I think that that's the way this one is oriented. I want to check to make sure that, see if it also lines up. And that's a little confusing because it lines up that way as well. I'm actually going to go offline and check on my computer model again to make sure I get this one oriented correctly as we put it together. Okay, I'm back, and I looked at the computer assembly model, and this little knockoff corner here is kind of the key for me to orient it. This tab here that's going to go up against the face of the turbo box is at the lower end of this thing, so I know it goes vertically in here like this, and that means that that flange will bend out or away from the face I'm looking at here. Somehow I have to help you understand which way it's oriented. Looking down on it here, I just bent that flange away, and this is, I'm looking at the face with this notch up here, so if that helps you orient. The underscore mark where the number was supposed to be is right here in the picture. And that tab bends down, and the rest of these tabs are all going to bend up towards us. Okay, so we got those tabs bent up, and then there's a line here, and that's going to bend. We're going to have a slight bend there. We probably have to overlap these just briefly to get it to bend. But that should kind of close up the space between these flanges should just kind of close up when we have that oriented correctly, or have it bent the right amount. So let's see how that flange closes up right there. So that one is going to be on the back side of the engine side of the exhaust pipe, and it's going to be inside. The top goes on here, bottom underneath, and we can shoot screws from above and below. So that was part number 12. Here's 16, and 16 I believe is going to go on the back side. Looks to me like 16 and 18 are pretty much the same. Okay, I had to go look at I had to bring up that computer model and look at it again. I tend to use the screw holes as part of my confirmation that I've got something in the right place. In this case, these 3 screw holes that should line up should have matching holes in the piece underneath here. The underlying holes are missing, so I'll have to go and put those in the computer model. If you get a kit that is this way, what you do is line up this dotted line with the perforated line underneath here, and when we put it together you can just shoot screws through there because they're self-drilling, self-tapping screws. But it made it confusing as to whether the piece was in the right place or not because there weren't screw holes where there should be. So this is the bottom of that first part of enclosure. This is the extension up the side. You'll already have a piece on this side that matches up here, probably this piece. And then this will overlap that and go right there. So this, sorry, making lots of noise. This is going to bend down from this is piece number 18 I'm looking at here, and I'm going to bend this down a little bit so it goes around this bend. It's just a very slight bend, a little bit more. We'll fit up against that, and we will have to put screw holes in the bottom of that. This flange on the top part of it now will bend over 90 degrees away from the face, the reference face here, and that piece is ready to go on. This is the back matching piece to that, and it'll be kind of the mirror image, except that this will bend out a little bit because it has to make the opposite corner, opposite bend, made up to the opposite piece. And this flange on top will come over towards us. So it'll be like that. Okay, and hopefully this will be clear when we put them together, but you need to get the flanges bent like this. This is piece number 16. You have this kind of double angle on the bottom. This wide flange bends up slightly. This flange bends down 90 degrees. And this is where we're going to come up. This curve is going to come up against our muffler, we hope. We have two pieces left, 17 and 18, or 18 and 17 and 19 it looks like. This is piece 19. I believe this is going to be the top of the box. And so it's going to come down from the muffler up here. We should have screw holes that line up here. And in fact, those screw holes line up. And then this is piece number 16, and we can use it as a reference because it's going to fit on here. We can use it as a reference to how to bend that. So this one's going to bend up like that to fit right there, and I bent it too much. Still a little bit much. And then this flange at the bottom gets just again a very, very slight bend up. Maybe a little more. It'll pull in place with screws. But that will come down here and then level out as a part of the bottom part of that enclosure. That's piece number 19. 17 is the bottom of the from the muffler down to, I think we can use this one as piece number, oh, that's 16. 16 is going to be the back side of that. And if we look at this, I'm just trying to decide whether the piece goes like this or like this. The underscore where the number should have been cut through is right up here, and that's going to be, that'll come right up to the muffler, and the shorter notch down here will be at the bottom end, the lower end, and these tabs will both be bent up to fit inside of this box. So we've got it oriented correctly, I think, or we can bend both tabs up. Okay, I believe that's the last piece of tin. So we've got a pile of tin sitting here on the tailgate. The next thing we'll do is take it step by step and put it together.